Call the meeting to order.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first item is the minutes of this committee's meeting.
Second, before we do that, any items to add to the agenda?
I just wanted to, Mayor,
Councillor
there's
Sikora.
3 items on today. Why are we brought up to this meeting this afternoon? We could have those meetings, dealt with those 3 items tonight. Tonight's meeting will probably be, without the public hearing, be about 5 minutes. So we're tying up the staff, we're tying up a whole raft of people. 2 o'clock, when we could have come into executive meeting at 4 o'clock and be done with it. I really can't understand why are we going through this silly system.
Well, this is the system you voted on.
Pardon?
It's a system that all of council voted on, yourself included, and it's...
And I didn't vote for it.
Well, you did, but we put those items in the afternoon. Essentially, it's true, it's tying up staff during their workday, but the alternative is to tie them up in an evening. And so I guess our challenge is, if council wants to change it, council will have to make a motion to change our policy, and then
well, I'm just throwing it out to the council members because, frankly, we're at meetings all this morning, and now we're here at 2 o'clock when we don't have to be because there's 3 items and nothing's kind of. And in the evening, you walk out by 8 o'clock, and the general public is looking at you saying, "When do you do the business for the city?" That's what they're saying.
Well, I've never heard anyone of them say that because actually quite a few of them prefer that they're able to come into the afternoon.
You can't hear when you're looking for lost people. But,
I beg your pardon?
No, it's hard.
Okay, if we want to change the council's policy, then we should do a motion. But rather than just debate the existing council policy every time it comes up.
Mayor, I don't want to debate it. All I'm saying that maybe we should.
But you're debating it.
We should put it on the agenda for discussion one day because this is silly.
We do every year, and we'll do it again. Okay? We probably should wait until we have 2 new council members on there, and then we'll do it in January as we normally do, and we'll have another debate about whether we should have afternoon meetings. But council is always, I'm going to be here in the afternoon or the evening, so it doesn't matter to me. Council always chooses to have some afternoon committee meetings and then the evening council meeting. And anyone else want to just talk about that? No? Okay. Okay, are there any items to be added to the agenda? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item 1 is the minutes of this committee's meeting of Monday, September 23rd. Recommendation to approve.
So moved. Second. Councilman O'Neill, all in favor, opposed, carried unanimously.
Next item, item 2, is delegation. I'd like to invite Mario Spagnuolo to come forward. He's at 3185 Mariner Way, and he's here to speak about parking in the laneway.
Mr. Spagnuolo.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm sorry I got a bit cold.
Good afternoon. Welcome to our committee meeting.
It looks like a beautiful looking people around here.
Oh, we're
My concern came here concerning about parking at the lane. Where I live, it's been a little problem there for the last few years. The fire trucks can go through, the garbage trucks can go through. It's been real problem. My car was on fire 5 years ago. The fire trucks have to stop about 5 hours away. And that's not fair. They all got a parking spot, but they all got a driveway. I don't know why they park on the lane. It's real concerning about that.
okay. So the only access to these properties is on the lane. It's
That's
not.
right.
It's not because they face Mariner, and Mariner's of course.
Mariner is the main road, but they got a lot of. We receive our letters, but they got some homes to be rental, and the owner doesn't care. We have to really. Last week, the garbage truck can go through. I have to hung the horn, so people can move the cars. That's very hard.
Okay. What's the nearest cross street to your home? What's the nearest road?
It's between Hauser.
It is Hauser and Dory.
What's the other street?
Windward?
At the bottom,
Windward?
it's Dory, I think.
Windward, yeah.
Windward.
Yeah, we do Hauser.
So are you on the west side of Mariner?
Yeah.
I think I don't know from west side. Yes,
West side of
Windward,
Mariner.
yeah.
So I've got it here.
I used to live on the east side.
And they got a few house rentals, you know, and, you know, I don't mind the renting a house, I don't mind what they do. But to park there, especially winter time, when I moved there 20 years ago, was a woman live up the street. And in November time, she was coming to the houses to give us some letters. Said, please be concerned about the parking in the winter time right on the lane, you know. But she moved out now. She's not there anymore. You know? So it is a real problem.
Okay. Okay, May?
Just on that side, I lived on the other side, and so I had the lane at the back, but I was on Capstan Way, so we had driveways off Capstan, but where you are, there's no driveways off Mariner, so they have to...
No, everybody's got a
yeah,
lane to
so
park.
they come in off the lane to park,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. Yeah, they can park. Everybody's got a driveway,
Yeah.
you know.
So
I
the
mean-
extra parking then is mostly tenants?
The people park right close to the street, close to the lane.
Yeah.
You know, I was down a fire truck to talk about a guy there. They told me that there was so many feet clearance. You know, I request, you know, I request to make a yellow line or something, you know, so people can understand. But you see, a lot of people they say, like I was talking to Mr. What's his name, the guy control.
Bylaws.
Bylaws.
Yeah, what's his name?
Well, there's a whole pile of them, so I'm not sure.
Oh, I
you
forget
would-
his name now. But, you know, he said, I passed by there, there's no concerning about it. But the problem is, if you pass by there after 5 o'clock or early in the morning, it is a concerning.
Okay.
So
Well-
my next
No.
question, if I can,
Yep.
is to that gentleman, to staff. Is there someone from Bylaws here? Oh, there you are. Do you know what the fine is for parking on a lane that could injure fire trucks? Because believe me, it does.
I'm not entirely sure. Since this is probably 75 or 150, but I can check the
It's
details.
not enough. Yeah. Okay, because I think,
Bylaws has attended 8 times between March 20th and April 25th. Some of those times were outside of sort of the daytime hours. One of them was around 8 o'clock. To observe any violations, we can certainly have some on that area.
okay, and is that bylaw static, or if you get one warning and then the next time the fee can be higher and the next time it can be higher?
We do not have a decision for us.
Maybe that's
Yes.
something we should think about. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
No, keep grounds of that, yep. I had similar, is there signage along there? I mean, we shouldn't have to put signage out there, but clearly, I'm looking at Google Earth and I see 4 cars parked in that
Yeah.
block. But that's 2 years ago. Yeah, it's a two-year-old image. So I don't know whether we were appropriately signed, and in the end, I don't think it's so much the size of the fine as the likelihood that you're going to get a ticket. If your likelihood is 50% or greater, then people don't park. But if it's a really slim likelihood, you could have a $500 fine, and we don't seem to get any reaction out of the people.
A couple of those would work.
So it probably would work in the long run. So I've got, you know,
Your Worship, just signage, typically we don't sign all the lanes, but we put lane marking down because there's a lot of things, and there's an expectation of being aware of kind of the rules of the road. However, in this case, we have sent a letter to all residents along there to try to advise them, make them aware of rules of parking, keeping a 3-meter clear zone on the lane. So we did that in July to encourage residents of that area to follow the
okay, sure.
Yes, thanks. So when a laneway, well, first off, this is a laneway, and what are the rules for parking? You're not allowed to park on laneway? What exactly are the
Mr.
rules?
Your Worship, you are allowed to park on the laneway, you just have to maintain keeping a clear path.
From the-
So,
Okay.
yeah,
So-
that's what our bylaw staff are looking for.
Okay, so when a laneway like this one is the primary access point, is there any difference between the regulations for that and a laneway that's just behind the house and it's secondary, tertiary access point?
Your Worship, there's not a difference in terms of that regulation. However, with our review of current standards, we are looking at primary access points, maybe provide a rational access type of thing. our typical standard is 4.5 meters, and we're looking at maybe 6 or 5.
Yeah, that was going to be my third question. I wondered if there should be a different width for primary access lanes. Okay, good. Well, that's good direction then. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm curious, when the lane is so obstructed as to be a problem to garbage trucks, fire trucks, or even residents, do we have the ability to tow?
My sense is that if there was to be a safety concern that would result in a violation of bylaw, we would
I like that answer. And then the other thing I would say, which doesn't help very much, is I did drive that twice over the weekend because I live in the neighborhood, and I didn't observe any problems at all. And I thought, goodness me, maybe everybody knows you're coming to council today, and so they clean up their act. I wasn't quite sure what had happened because I can tell you that a few months ago I went to look at a used car that someone was selling in their neighborhood, and I had to wend my way through traffic, parked cars to get there. And then while I was looking at the used car, I had to go and move my car for someone who blew their horn. But it's too late for you to write a ticket.
Admission of guilt now can be.
Yeah, unless you admit the date.
But I think, staff looking for some solutions like signage or yellow lines or something that indicate don't park here.
Okay.
Well, there's no parking.
No.
Well, and maybe that's the other reality is that on primary access lanes, the alternative to being able to widen the pavement in the short term would be to say no parking. I'm left with, unless you're on private property, unless you can actually park your car entirely on private property, which of course we wouldn't be able to restrict. I find myself wondering if, for example, two cars were to park on opposite sides of the lane, each sticking a little bit into the lane, and we reduced it by more than the permitted amount. Which one did you ticket? And so I'm left. You can't take up the first car that got there because they didn't obstruct, and you couldn't be able to prove which one did. So I think we're going to need a review of this particular stretch, and perhaps the stretch on the other side. Although we haven't heard anything from them, I see there's cars on that stretch too. So I don't know. Any thoughts from council? Apart from what we've already heard, and perhaps a review of the price of a parking ticket.
I think a little sign at each end is no obstruction in the lane, fine, $175 or whatever you can put on there. That should go a long way to helping people while we sort it out. But I agree with you, Your Worship. I think we need to look at the lanes like this. When I lived there, we couldn't get a fire truck down either. They actually had to go out and around and up the other way. So
we have a little problem that the street is half is even number, another half is an odd number.
Yes, it's quite odd. Yeah.
So when we phoned the city, they came there to put a sign on. It was very nice. People they know now, which way to go.
Yes. There are some streets in Coquitlam that end in Port Moody, and so the last few houses are a completely different number. So
you weren't mayor then.
I wasn't mayor then. So I want to thank you very much for coming in.
Okay.
We're gonna put our mind to this and see what we can come up with.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day.
The next item, item 3, concerns wayfinding for pedestrians, cyclists, and public parking. This is for information.
Move recommendations.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Nicholson. Do you want to present anything to us, or no? You don't care to? Does anyone have any questions? Councillor.
As long as you keep all the street signs washed so you can read them.
That was it?
Well, I look at Sherbrooke Street, looks pretty good there, but if it was in our city, you couldn't read it.
Oh, yeah, I have a comment.
Okay. Councillor Asmussen, Councillor Hodge, Councillor O'Neill.
I like the report. I think, clearly, as we've seen with Ministry of Highways and signage and the need for clear signage in all forms of transportation can be improved. And so I like the idea of what we're doing within here, but as cities change and how we move about, how often are you going to be looking at revising your best practice that you're talking about with your wayfind signings and updating it? Because I've known around the city we have some signs that are quite old that don't quite give the proper information today.
Your Worship, this will provide an opportunity to review our wayfinding strategy, as well as to revisit and discuss how frequently we should be updating and reviewing old signage. So I think it provides a mechanism, and that kind of aspect should be included in that, because it's not going to be status quo 5 or 10 years from now.
So you expect about 2014 back to the more detailed report on wayfinds?
Yes, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Yep. Councillor Hodge.
Yeah, I certainly I like the report, like the information on it. Two items that sort of caught my attention. One was the parking wayfinding. I don't see if anybody here is from Parks and Leisure, but I would like to sort of suggest that one of the key places we can put up signage is for town center parking for the northeast lot, because that fills up. We're regularly ticketing cars parked in the fire zone, and we have that new lot up on the northwest corner. And it would be very helpful if we had signage near the entrance directing people to where the overflow parking is, and also maybe even on Pine Tree, so that people coming from out of town to sporting events, they come up Pine Tree, they go all the way around, get into what they think is the nearest lot, and then there's no parking. So signage to make use of that new lot, both on Pine Tree, but also directing people to the overflow parking. So I know that's something as a general comment, but I think that's where we can get on something right away. The other one that I
refer that to the Parks Department.
But I was going to say yes. I was hoping Parks were here to hear my comment. But we'll
Your Worship, on that, Traffic Ops does work closely with Parks on that aspect, so we can certainly pass that along.
Okay, good, thank you. Next steps, retaining a consultant to prepare an overall city plan and identify cost implications. I'm just wondering if we have a budget for that, and if that isn't something that we can't do in-house. Is this something that really requires outside consultant for?
It's we've identified it as a potential use under the capital budget for the density bonus funds in the city center and through the Evergreen corridor areas. Part of this is we're seeing that the consultant support can give us information from some of the other areas in the region that have gone through some of these exercises. For example, the City of Vancouver and UBC just recently did some wayfinding work as part of the Olympics. We want some of the expertise to come from them, but it is something that would be done interdepartmentally and in consultation, so with parks and communications, and because part of this is about sort of branding the city, and so it overlaps all of the other areas. So it is proposed within the 2014-2018 capital plan, and of course that's for council's consideration in reviewing the budget.
So that will come up at budget time, but I can see the need for communications to be involved in it, and I understand it will be multi-departmental. I'll be certain when we get to budget time, we'll be sort of looking at, obviously as an expense item as we move forward. But other than that, I like what I see in the report, and those are my two comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, thanks. I just have a question and a comment, I guess, combined. How much integration or thought to integrating pictorial symbols goes into this? For the last 30 years now, the world essentially has adopted a group of symbols developed for the U.S. Department of Transportation, I think, by an outside company. And those have become universal standards. There's 50 or 60 of these things. And very powerful. Everybody understands them. And certainly in our society, where there's so many newcomers that come here, and it's so great of illiteracy in terms of English, that these are all that much more meaningful here. So I just want to make sure that that's part of the agenda for these wayfinding, pedestrian and automotive. Is that a big component of what you're doing here? The symbols.
Your Worship, for sure. I think they mean a lot. Once people become familiar with the symbol, and they can discern a lot of information from a very brief look at something, and so there's definite benefits to using symbols wherever we can. So it'll be a consideration through the wayfinding work, trying to incorporate symbols wherever we can.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I had a couple of issues. I really like the ones that I've seen in a few cities, Victoria included, that are essentially the deco map on the side of an electric box. You produce 20 of them and you start sticking them on signal boxes, where we currently use the really nice images. I love the photography that we've incorporated into those signal boxes, but every now and then we should perhaps take advantage of the corporate, some of the messaging that we want to get out there as well for pedestrians. I must say that I read with keen interest the bike route stuff, because the suggestion that the sign that says bike route is turning at the next turn should be before the corner, I think. And on Ranch Park, it is impossible to find your way down there if you've never been down before. There's a couple of the corners that don't have signage. What you do is you end up coming to each corner and looking down the road, and if you can see the bike route symbol on the pavement further ahead, then you know you're supposed to turn there. And that happens at Saddle, I think it is there. Anyway, so I recognize some of this is little details, but unfortunately, if you're following the bike path and you get off the bike path, you can't find your way back, because there's no wayfinding on the road next door that says the bike path is actually, the bike route is the route next door. So I think we'll get there, and this is...
Yes, I am very familiar, Your Worship, with where you're talking, and did get caught and had to ride back uphill, which was really hard in Ranch Park. So we do have the crosstown bike route as a separate item, actually, and we had been to council, I believe, before on the functional planning, and there is some funding for implementation in next year's 5-year capital. So we'll be going back and dealing with the missing links, as well as your suggestion at Saddle and Ranch Park will be a part of that. But that's an indication of wayfinding and how important it is to identify the route on the cycling side, because not every street is actually okay for cycling, unfortunately at this stage. So.
Well, in fact, I can't even remember. I wish I'd taken pictures, because there's some communities that have that. It's at the corner. You can't miss it. It's right into the pavement or something. And I'd love to see us try to incorporate something that says to cyclists, whether it's the green color, which Vancouver has adopted for some of the cycle routes, or something that cyclists will get used to. Because once they start, once they start and they realize that a blue and white stripe on the poles means Central Valley Greenway, then you keep looking for the blue and white stripe. There's something as simple as that. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, seeing as you've reduced it all to Ranch Park, I sent Lynn an email.
Does it all come down to Ranch Park?
That's right. I'm moving.
You're moving up.
The focus of council will soon move. I sent Lynn an email because her name was first on the list, and then I had a conversation with Ian briefly this morning. But the footpaths that exist throughout Ranch Park, we've talked before about the fact that the only way you can find them is by walking along them and then trying to figure out where to go next. And if you have a good dog leading you, it works out quite nicely. But I suspect part of the intent was to provide safe walks to school, things like that. People, certainly shorter paths for pedestrians, and those uphills are in some ways tougher on pedestrians than they are on cyclists. So something that could give people the way to know how to find those paths at the end of the cul-de-sac. It's not sort of normal for a pedestrian to decide to walk into a blind cul-de-sac. But that would be helpful. Thank you.
read.
And there may be similar things in other parts of the city, but I don't know.
Well, Thermal Drive, actually, 700 block Thermal is a pedestrian path. I don't know where it goes, but I've often wanted to go down it. Anyway, anybody else? The motion is to receive. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Next item, item 4, concerns TravelSmart and its launch events, the reports from information.
So, information. Recommend to receipt. Move receipt, yes.
Second.
Okay, Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Asmussen. Nobody? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Pass up an opportunity to take turns.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we did it big time last time.
Yeah, we've already done it. Oh, they're not here.
I know. They're watching.
Item 5 is an Evergreen ALRT line update, fall 2013. We have introductory comments by the GM of Strategic Initiatives, and the report is for information.
Mayor and Council, the report before you today is another in a series of regular updates on the Evergreen line from staff. Just want to highlight a couple of report items that for your attention. First of all, the conduit for the special effects lighting will now be placed in all of the columns by the province. And this will be done at no cost to the city. So we see that as a very positive thing, that we will not be having conduit along the concrete columns, but they will be placed in as they pour the new foundations for the ALRT line. Secondly, the Coquitlam traffic and transportation study is now complete, and the concept will be incorporated as input into the Coquitlam Lawhead neighborhood plan update process. So that will become a public process that our own planning department will be involved in and looking for public input down the road. A new pedestrian signal has been recently installed by the province on Pine Tree and Town Center, just immediately north of City Hall here, and with the intention that over time it will become a full signal at that point. So staff were very interested in having a full signal there. We were able to talk to the province, and we came in agreement that over time that will become a full signal at that location. And finally, the province will be holding a meeting on the narrowing of the Cottonwood Avenue. This is a public meeting, and it is now confirmed. We just got the date from the province for Thursday, October 10th, and that will be from 6 to 7 p.m. at the Evergreen Line offices down on Barnett Avenue. So that those are the highlights that I wanted to bring forward, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. And sorry, I'm writing down a name here. And I particularly appreciate that the conduit is going in. I really want the public to be able to recognize when this is done that we put a lot of thought really early in the process into making this line a really attractive amenity in our community and not just a very functional one. I think every member of council wants it to be really nice, and that means putting some thought in way early. Appreciate it. Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, a thought came to me in light of the recent accident in Surrey with the children jaywalking, and something that somebody from Douglas College community mentioned to me over the weekend, actually, at an event I was at, was the potential for increased jaywalking right here at the terminus station here to get to Douglas College. And has any thought gone into jaywalk prevention, education? And they were saying, well, you're going to need an overpass. So I said, well, that's not in the plans right now. I said, I did tell them that there were intersection improvements planned that would make it more safe for pedestrian crossings, less space to go across the street and everything like that, curb bulges and all that. But they said, well, I don't know if that'll be enough, that we might need something more to prevent the jaywalking. Are we looking at anything like that? Does that discussion come up? Mr. Adams.
Yes, Your Worship. Our focus has been to make it very attractive to cross at intersections, and the city staff also fought hard to get that pedestrian signal included in the provincial project, because it's a desire line to the Douglas College and to the school north of the station. So we've been looking at ways to make it attractive to cross the street and we haven't looked at whether there's really going to be a need to, put in fencing and that kind of thing. We'd like to avoid doing that if we can. So we're hoping that the positive aspects of what we're doing will avoid that becoming a concern in this area.
The second question I had was about this park and ride options. The province has identified a desire to achieve in the order of 150 to 200 park and ride stalls on city lands in the vicinity at the beginning of the ELG line. That's the beginning or the terminus, but whatever you look at it here. Now this is the province's desire. I know we've done a lot of parking studies for this area. Do we have our own figure on what we think is going to be sufficient? Have we done any analysis on how many cars we think are going to be pouring into the area here and at Lincoln Station and at the around Lincoln Station and around Central Station?
Your Worship, there's two things. I guess the province, through their work, did some analysis of what they thought the parking requirements would be for park and ride, and that's how that number of 500 additional stalls between Port Moody and the end of the line was. That came out of that process. There's two schools of thought on park and ride, so they also have TransLink that has had a aversion to park and ride, and they want people to take transit, etc., which doesn't always work in areas like ours without the transit service to support it to get to the rapid transit line. And then the second part of that is that the city itself, we have also undertaken through our transportation group, have had some consultants look at, well, what do we think will be the parking demand? So we've done that. We have a number of reports on parking that will be coming to council to consider various aspects, as well as we did a civic precinct review of parking kind of north of Guildford and Douglas College and all of our civic and park uses, and so we'll be reporting back on that in the near future as well.
We spent a lot of time on council, the year and a half, 2 years that we've been on council, and that I've been on council, and talking about parking. And for the most part, I think we've gotten it right with the new parking regulations for transit-oriented development and everything like this. So this is going to be another really important part of what we're doing here. We have to get this right as well. It has a major potential impact on our new city centers. So
Your Worship,
it's in your sights.
Your Worship, I just want to say one more thing. Both the province and staff believe that there's going to be a demand to have parking in close proximity somehow to the first station or the terminus station, whatever you want to call it, because that's where they can get a good seat and get all the way to Vancouver and so on. So, and it's also something through the station consultation that came up with the community, is there was a desire to have parking somehow at the end of the line. So I think there's a public expectation to have parking somehow, and the province desires to somehow achieve that. So they're trying to work with the city to see how we might be able to achieve it.
And our final question, there's still enough time for us to look after that. They're already starting to build, and if something major needs to be done to look after that, there's enough time for us to carry that out in time for the opening.
Your Worship, the parking solution doesn't depend on the structure itself, so we should be fine in terms of continuing to solve this issue in the coming months.
Thank you.
With that being said, we will be moving it forward for a report for council consideration probably later this fall.
With full recognition that fully 1/3 of our population, the closest station will be the terminus station. So they'll want to park there. They're not going to want to drive further down. And suggesting that we rely on buses has proven not to be the best solution in the suburbs because we don't have the buses. Councillor Hodge.
Well, that was a segue. You probably knew when my hand went up that I wanted to talk about parking and park and ride. So I'm glad that certainly that we have that report coming forward, and look forward to that, getting that information. There's you and I have had a number of discussions about the need for park and ride, and I really want to see us move ahead where we can get parking. I like the idea of the end of the terminal because I believe that we have the potential to share that parking with sports users on the weekends and things, and so I think that's an excellent location. If we can put something, terminus, as the mayor said, that's where people want to get on there for a good seat, and it also happens to be right where we're going to need parking for sports activities. So I think it's something that we certainly want to consider, and I look forward to getting the information in that report. Again, Councillor Neal touched on, I think, there's an expectation that it will be built in time for certainly a number of people, that will have it in time for the opening of the line, even though it's separate from the line. We all know the issues around from buses, and I just hate to see people getting in their cars and driving past that station heading to Vancouver, when if we can provide them a place to park, they can stop, get on the line, and use the line the rest of the way in. So, yeah, again, I don't know that 150 to 200 is the right number. I'm hoping that when we get the information from your report, but anecdotally I can tell you with the amount of development on Burke Mountain and with people now buying cars, it's going to be a challenge to get people onto buses to use transit. But if we can get them to park and rides, that's at least better than having them driving all the way into Vancouver. And on the conduit, yes, let's get the electrical in. If we can't afford to do it now, let's at least put the the wiring, the infrastructure in, so that we can use it in the future. So as I said, thank you. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm definitely looking forward to getting the information on the park.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate that my colleagues have left me with very little to say and nothing to disagree with. The narrowing of Cottonwood Avenue. Town Hall meeting on October the 10th to deal with Cottonwood Avenue between North Road and Whiting Way being held just over here on the Barnett Highway, I find really difficult to accept. I'm sure that we could assist the province in finding a venue for that meeting considerably closer to the people who are affected. There must be a school in the neighborhood, or get a big tent. And the other thing I was going to suggest is they intend to notify residents and property owners by mail and door-to-door to some business owners. They might also consider a distribution through the school to get families, people in the neighborhood who are bound to be affected. I'd really very much like to see that town hall meeting take place where it's easily accessible. Once the SkyTrain's built, then it's okay to have meetings out there.
Your Worship, that's a very good suggestion. We'll follow up with the province on that, providing that the advertising and invitations hasn't gone out. Perhaps we can arrange for that change in venue, and we'll certainly suggest going through the schools as well.
Thank
you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. I have two things. Just on the park and ride option, of course I beat this poor little park and ride thing to death, but the one at Lincoln, I'm back to the same one that 20 years ago we had set aside for park and ride if we ever got SkyTrain, which of course we were getting in 1990, 1993, 1996, stop there. I still want to build that, and I want to build it in cooperation with some of the developers that want to get in there, and I want to lease them some parking, and I want to build that parquet. I want to see it go up. And that will will relieve some of it off the end one, but put some of it right in our town center where we're going to need it. We really are. My biggest concern here, though, is on page 4, and you're talking about the South Tunnel portal. Do you know what arrangements the SkyTrain team has, or you have, for notifying the neighbors exactly when they're going to get in there with their little diggers and shovels and all the things that they're going to use? And do you know if, in this particular instance, if they go in and take pictures of foundations and roof overhangs and things like that before they start with the giant machines, the boring one to start with? Because we're really close to some 50-year-old homes at the back there. And I would like to know whose job that is. Is it ours or is it theirs? And what extra insurance do these people have to have, or they have, or we have?
Your Worship, first of all, at the South Tunnel Portal, there's been a great deal of activity already in terms of construction. However, the tunnel boring machine isn't there yet. They have done a number of columns and some earthwork and some shoring,
But they're
etc.
not underground where the trouble starts.
Yeah, well, they've started to dig underground as well. However, just in terms of what the contractor does, they do pre-surveys, pre-construction surveys, and depending on the building and things like that, they'll actually go and take pictures and put on, elevation monitoring, that kind of thing. I know they've done that on some of our bridges and or the Marin Overpass, as well as the City Hall and some of our other facilities. So I imagine they're doing the same thing in that area, and the province and the contractor will be responsible for that.
I imagine that they're doing it too, but I just want to make sure. I don't want to imagine it, because some of my clients who were on the Canby corridor, it was a nightmare, and they didn't quite cover themselves, and I want to make sure those residents at the top of the hill are covered.
I was going to say one other thing is that they do have regular information and communication with the residents in that area as well. I think when Ms. Farrell was at council last week, she did indicate that they're meeting with the Oakdale Residents Association as well in the near future. But we can certainly follow up relative to whether they've done any specific monitoring in that area.
I just want to make sure that we're covered. I mean, I think that's something that we should be doing ourselves, and that they are taking responsibility, because these are 50-year-old homes, and they all have basements along there too, fellas. So
The one difference between this project and the Canby Street is this is a very deep tunnel for most parts. So it's not like you're down maybe 30 feet or something. Many places this tunnel's like 1,800 or more feet. But there are areas when it starts to come back in daylight that could be affected. So we'll follow up in that regard. We believe that it is province's responsibility, but we'll make sure that they're doing the due process.
Thunder and lightning can shake your house and make cracks. I'm sure a great giant mole going under the ground can do something too. So I'm done.
And I'll say it before Councillor O'Neill does. I don't find it to be a boring machine. I find it quite exciting.
Oh, no.
Brent?
Oh, easy to call something that bad. Easy.
Just don't dig yourself into a deeper hole.
That's Richard's job. I guess I sent an email, and one of the things we still talk about the whole project is minimizing the impacts on traffic as we flow through. We had some issues early on. That's been improved. I did have an email that I put over to Ian about Coquitlam Plaza, the changing of entry and exit points, and parking. And a person parked in an area where didn't know any parking signs, came out and got from workers that, and the effect on businesses in there. So I think they need to be better at their information in regards to when they're changing the exit and entrances to that area, giving a lot of notice and warning ahead of time, because that plaza there is suffering quite a bit just because of the blockage and the people not going in there. And we need to make sure that they minimize that more than that situation. I went up there after that, talked to some people in there, and there is some where we haven't heard it. I don't know if we're getting information from the team, but there has been concerns about getting in and out of there. It hasn't been as easy as people would like. When we put the light on Pine Tree, and I get a lot of complaints from people about Pine Tree and Johnson, coming down off the mountain, once you get down there, you start hitting these series of constant lights, stop lights, stop lights. So are you going to be syncing the light better to have the traffic that's on Pine Tree with the new light flowing better? Because
Your Worship, one of the requirements for the signal when it becomes a full signal at that location, right now it's it's a pedestrian signal, will be that it be coordinated with the signals down Pine Tree Way, so that you have coordination.
yeah, so that's just trying to get that flow down there, because there's a lot of people complaining, especially like Johnson, about the constant stop and go getting through where you hit the mall and the lack of flow through there. The other issue I have, and I just want to make sure, in regards to the bus loop that's being planned at Coquitlam, and there's a concept plan. Now, is that the finalized plan that's going to be going out to the public, or is that still within the stage of more work with TransLink and the city in the project?
Your worship, that was a technical exercise where a consultant team was hired by the city and TransLink, and both, from a staff perspective at both agencies, comfortable with the solution that arose through that. I think that what we're talking about is that there's been no public consultation or discussion with council on that. So we think that it makes sense to go to that next step, not before the neighborhood plan proceeds, but maybe in conjunction with that. So that's currently the plan, is to do that in conjunction with the neighborhood planning process. So yes, TransLink is happy with the outcome of this review.
Okay, I guess my one concern is to you is TransLink's philosophy in creating new bus exchanges has been to create for the minimum standard for levels today. And as we know, our city is going to grow by 80,000 people, a lot of people in that area. So when you look at this concept plan, we want to be able to look at what can be increasable, what is the ability to, if there's more service coming in and out of there, and will that be adaptable to that in the future? I think we have to look to the future more. TransLink's budget's been cut. They've been really, I take Glowheat Mall prior to the construction was extremely limited in its size. And so that's just a concern as we move forward on this from previous experience.
Your worship, just to comment on that, is that the interim, or the bus exchange that's being proposed and being built by the province for the Evergreen line, it's not something that, has a lot of resilience to handle the future. So that's both TransLink and the city had concerns about the solution that's being delivered. Okay. And so this study was done in order to look at, well, how could this be done, and how could it be done in a way that supports the growth objectives of the city in the area. So that was definitely the objective, was to look at that forward-looking look, and also to consider kind of the emerging neighborhood in the area and the transit-oriented development strategy that the city has in place.
Okay, thank you. The other thing is, we talk about park and rides. I don't see park and rides as being the end and all to our solutions here for transit and transportation. But when you're looking at these park and rides, are you looking at a traffic studies in regards to the congestion that park and rides will do within peak hours and what that's going to have on the transportation network in that area? Have you done those analysis and studies?
Your worship, some of the work, the modeling work that transportation group has done for engineering is to look at where would people go to park based on all of those things, like the congestion levels and that kind of thing. It's more of at a high level, though, like they're coming from the northeast and where would they want to go, and they would have delays traveling down Pine Tree and that kind of a thing. So at a high level, it does consider it. I mean, I don't think it really considers it at a local level. We haven't got to that kind of detail.
There's a concern, especially in those peak hours going in and when you're coming out with the other flows of traffic that will be growing in that area, what effect that's going to have on the traffic movements in those areas. I do find those sometimes from our council are concerns about the negativity towards bus service or future bus service not being the answer and park and rides being the answer. Bus service would be there as long as there's funding available, and there hasn't been funding available for any increased service. And that's the key to making bus service work in the area, is to have proper funding. And at the end of the day, you want to have people and congestion off the roads as much as possible. And so I think the real answer when we talk about the buses will work, not in a negative sense, but the funding needs to be there to provide the service to get the people to move. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Councilor Rowan.
Got a little follow-up question. What's the time frame for when the big tunneling machine will start at the north end, and how long is it projected to take to come out of the south end? So is that a year-long process? Is that something that's
Your worship, I think they were indicating
going up
starting at the low point, I think, the north point.
That's correct. They start at the low point, so the rationale is if they have any water, they can bring the water out as the boring machine moves up the slope.
Yeah.
And there is probability that you'll encounter some groundwater. We believe that the latest in the province is the boring machine will be delivered, will come from another country. As this machine goes all over the world to do these large type of infrastructure projects, sometime around the end of this year. can start at that time, is the latest that we think.
Yep.
And it's a significant project, so it's going to take a number of months, probably at least a year or more by the time they're done, I would think.
Your Worship, the tunnel boring is on the critical path for the project, so it is kind of the most important thing to get going as quickly as possible. So I don't know the exact timing. It's something that we can bring forward in our next update report to council. Maybe is just to let you know more about the tunnel boring schedule and when we'll see it coming out of the other end.
So, yeah, starting maybe the end of this year, early next year, and taking about a year to go. So taking about a year of actual tunneling work. That big machine.
Your Worship, definitely arriving at the end of this year and starting either toward the end of this year or early next year. I'm not sure when it would be ending, whether it's a year or long.
2014 will be the boring year then. Okay, thanks.
Maybe we go first,
It
yeah.
could resist. Now, almost all the impact of the tunnel boring is in Port Moody, though. The
Yes.
removal of soils, obviously, all of that.
Your Worship,
Yeah,
the
tailings.
soils will be removed at Port Moody. Of course, they'll have to haul the soil somewhere, so we're waiting to see kind of where they're planning to haul those. So we're expecting further details on that later, soon.
Okay.
Could build more land.
And then fill in the inlet.
That's right.
Is this a causeway,
Shorten the
causeway
shore.
to Belcarra, maybe?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I tried.
Let's
I'm
start
not
let's
serious.
start a bad rumor.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So move receipt.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
A happy man, there's got to be rebar there somewhere.
Lots of it.
Lots of it.
Oh boy.
All right.
It's so exciting.
Yeah.
Not boring at all.
More here than
I
anywhere else
see
in
him
the city.
smiling.
Mr. Chair, that's the last formal item on this agenda, and we have no OB items.
Cool.
Move adjourned.
Second.
Nicholson, Hodge, all in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Yes, you had a question? Yes. All in favor? Passed.